Hello, this is Jackie B. Peterson. Welcome to Solo Pro Radio. I am your host today, and I am the author of a book called Better, Smarter, Richer, 7 Business Principles for Solo and Creative Entrepreneurs. And what I know is that solopreneurship is the business model of the 21st century. It's the business model for creatives, for professionals, self-employed professionals, and for many, 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 many of the encore entrepreneurs, people over 50 who are starting businesses in droves. There are more people starting businesses over 50 than any other age group, which I think is quite exciting. So go to the website, bettersmarterricher.com. You can download my free ebook outlining the 7 principles that make solo businesses distinctly different from traditional businesses. You can also sign up for our newsletter and join the conversation on the blog, which is pretty active. And I want you to check out the calendar. There are some events that will be coming up this fall. I'll be starting the next cohort of Better, Smarter, Richer study group on September 2nd. We're going to launch at the Small Business Development Center at Portland Community College. We're going to launch our Encore Entrepreneur program with a study group around creating a business concept on September 11th. And I will be offering a free symposium about Better, Smarter, Richer on September 17th. So I'm sure there's some of those things that you can plug into, and I'd love to have it. So today, my guest is Alicia Lanier. And Alicia is a civil engineer turned multidisciplinary project manager. She focuses on complex projects that require collaboration and effective communication across large cross-functional teams with multiple stakeholders. She coaches teams to help them select the appropriate framework for managing a project, developing project-specific tools, and she teaches them how to use those tools. Alicia says, I help teams work together to achieve great things. I love that. Most recently, she's been invited to speak about her methodology at international conferences. She's definitely a solo on the move. Please welcome Alicia Lanier. Hello, Alicia.
Hey, Jackie.
I'm so glad you could be with us today. This is terrific.
Yes. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Mine too. So start off, why don't you tell us your story, like where you grew up and went to school and what led you to choose a career in civil engineering and even more specifically in project management. How'd you get there?
Okay, it's a long story. I'll try to make it short, Jackie. I grew up on a farm in southeastern North Carolina. And I was fortunate having parents who told me daily, when you go to college, they didn't use the term if you go to college.
Uh-huh.
So I was the first of my entire extended family to go away to a university. And that's from having a granddaddy with a 3rd grade education. So I started out in psychology, believe it or not. It's I guess I don't know if you know that part of my story, but it's kind of weird how events transpire. My first sociology class really annoyed me because I just could not believe that people could be so predictable, and I think that's just from being young and feeling that you're incredibly unique. So I quit that and had a friend who was in mechanical engineering at the time. He was studying mechanical engineering, and he thought that I had the capabilities to take on engineering, and it sounded interesting to me because I could work out in the fields too. So I picked biological and agricultural engineering, which really was, and I minored in civil, and bio and ag helped put the civil engineering in context for me. Applied the civil engineering to agricultural kind of systems.
Mm-hmm.
So after, and then I got my professional engineer license in civil engineering while I was working at CH Tilden Hill. For project management, I always liked working with people. In the university, I led my student professional organizations' annual meetings, and we put on a big conference, which I was a key organizer of. And I really just liked being the person. I think I kind of liked being the person who made things happen. I didn't have to be the front man, but I really wanted to make sure I could make things happen smoothly. And so that's really how I got into it.
It's funny. That's a funny story. She says, I like being the person who makes things happen, and I look for a career that made things happen. That's pretty fantastic. So you became a self-employed solo project manager. Are there many people like that?
Yeah, I believe so. I'm finding a lot of people are self-employed project managers, especially in the world of agile project management. And I'm meeting more and more of them as I get further into that field of study. A lot of my work has been a lot of their work typically is for businesses, private businesses. Mm-hmm. A lot of my work has been in the city, state government, and university system.
Oh, interesting. Huh. Mm-hmm. So can you kind of give us an idea of what a project that you've worked on as a solo self-employed project manager?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I wanted to mention for the city of Portland, I've actually been doing this work for over 12 years, and a lot of my work for them has been for permit-driven projects. And the reason why they use me and my specific skill set is because those kinds of projects are complex and they're full of uncertainty, and so it's really hard to define up front what they really want to produce. And they're usually projects that span over several years, and they require cross-functional teams or, multidisciplinary teams, and a lot of work that requires a lot of communication skills. And my most recent project, which I'm really excited about, is I've been coaching the managing principal investigator of a research project that's through the Florida International University in Miami. It's a National Science Foundation grant that was funded for 5 years and for $5 million. The team is dispersed across. There are 10 universities involved across the United States. And we're in our second year now of that project. And I've also helped them prepare and facilitate the annual meeting and other workshops. It's really been the most challenging project I've ever worked on, but really fun and stretching me, that's for sure.
Oh, isn't that great? I was just thinking as you were talking that you really do herd cats.
Well, you know what I did? Jackie, I gave a talk in Rome on that project, and one of my slides, I thought about that, herding cats. So I changed the title I changed that slide where I showed all the different universities, and I put, because herding cats I have cats, and I thought, well, maybe that's not possible at all. I changed the title to Herding Geniuses.
Oh, there you go.
I like that a lot better. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and what it means, of course, is people who are opinionated and smart, and they know they're right, and you have to prove yourself before they're going to take any direction from you. And, but they need direction if they're going to come together and coordinate and get anything meaningful done. So that's really quite a statement, actually.
Yeah, well, the real beauty of it all, and what I like doing and why I like this kind of work, Jackie, is because people, and this is kind of related to my whole path through project management. People really want to do good things and want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And they really don't need a lot of structure, but they need just enough structure so that they're supported and they can be creative. And that's sort of how I see myself, as a servant, facilitative leadership role, more than giving directions. It's more how can I best support the team, and how can I help my clients understand how best to support their team. Because we were trained to give directions and trained to make a lot of decisions and maybe take on the monkeys we didn't need to take on, as Jeff Crow would say. People can solve a lot of problems themselves if they have the right support. Anyway, that's kind of getting off the question you just asked.
No, but I think that's very
interesting.
I think it's very interesting about how you do that. I see old hierarchies coming down everywhere, and that's, to me, what you're talking about, that the moving away from an old hierarchical system, tell people what to do, into a much more collaborative system. And, that concept of giving people just the amount of structure and support that they need in order to bring forth their creative side. That, too, would make a unique value proposition for you.
Okay. We keep working on that.
Yeah. And I think that's very 21st century. That you're doing it that way, rather than standing at the top and telling people what they have to do and, get in that line or follow that path or whatever, but rather providing just the right tool at the right time to give them just enough support that they can make fabulous decisions and move forward. As I say, that's very 21st century.
Yeah, I think it has to be that way, and I guess maybe I'm on the tail end of the baby boomers, and I'm seeing where the generations, preferences for the different generations. There are different preferences for the way we use for our older generation versus the millennials and everyone else coming in to the workforce. And we have to bridge that somehow. And what I'm really interested in too is helping both sides kind of be able to bridge, so we transition our older workforce, help our older workforce be super productive and super I don't know what the word is. There's a lot of knowledge. I mean, you're doing the Encore Entrepreneur, and before they get to that step, before they retire, before they're ready to go out on their own or retire or go out on their own, they may still have 5 or 10 years of being in the workforce with all these younger people, millennial generation and younger, coming in demanding a different way of doing things. And it's really interesting to me to think about how to bridge that gap, so this generation with all that knowledge can transfer that knowledge, because it's very valuable, and be able to do it and communicate it in a way that this younger generation coming in will listen to it and be able to all work together.
Well, I have to tell you that is one of my big issues as well. And if you go to the Better, Smarter, Richer website and you look for 3 consecutive interviews that we did with a consultant named Doug Lundrigan, who has a business called Lighthouse for Business, we had 3 consecutive interviews where we talked about the culture of the 21st century organization and what people needed to do to be able to bridge that change that was happening between the older workforce and the new workforce coming on board, I think you would find it very helpful to what you're looking at, because I think it's a huge issue, and I think it's also a huge opportunity. So go take a look. You would like it, and not only that, there's a reading list of things that we think that people should read to understand this transition that is happening, and we identified 12 characteristics of the 21st century business, and what people could read to look at themselves and adapt to what is happening. So there you go.
Yeah,
it's huge. It's huge.
I'll definitely take a look at that, Jackie.
Yeah, do. I think you'd really enjoy it.
And then, and in my world, if you think about it, if I were to go into, say, I don't know, I talked to a guy at Portland last night at the Project Management Institute meeting, and he's interested in having me come in and talk because he's got a big part of the workforce that's got 25 years in. Maybe they don't want to learn, they may not be interested in learning a lot of these new project management techniques, but if I could come in and help them understand some of the very simple things that would get them to a place where they could bridge this gap, they'd have a much more seamless organization, and I think our workforce would, our older generation would be able to retire on top of their game instead of sometimes feeling like they're not quite keeping up or something.
Yeah, that they've been left behind.
Definitely.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's a wonderful mission. So I think it's unusual for a project manager, at least the ones I've known, to be as broad-based as you are, Alicia, and I know you've studied facilitation methods, human systems, various project management systems. So how have you integrated all these diverse disciplines into your work?
Well, they're all part of every project, and I was thinking about that they're completely interwoven, and maybe the best way to tell you about that is to give an example or sort of example of how I might do that. So for a particular project, I'd work with the client to select the right project management framework for each stage and cycle of the project, because you can't just pick one in the beginning. It may not work for every single aspect of a project. In fact, it usually doesn't. And that means I have to have a pretty big project management toolbox. And then I use facilitation for a lot of different purposes, from chartering, helping the client develop vision for the project, to simple meetings, managing simple meetings, to project planning and even strategic planning, and retrospectives, that kind of thing. And then human systems dynamics. The main thing I got out of that course, which I took last summer, there's so much depth there, and I'm continuing to study that. The key learning that I took away last summer was we have huge toolboxes of facilitation techniques, but do we really understand why a certain technique works under what condition? And so with that course and with some of that learning, I've started to understand better the theory behind a tool, the theory behind why select tools work. And that really helps. That helps me choose the right tool for the right situation.
Great.
Yeah. And then, overall, I try to share whatever I know and empower the team to take on, the responsibilities that I know they can. So I don't know if you want an example of that, or
Sure.
Let me give you one, because I think
I just think this is fascinating.
Okay, I really love this example. So in the Agile project management world, there's something called retrospectives, and retrospectives are in Agile with Scrum. Retrospectives are a way of reflecting back on an iterative piece of work and thinking about, maybe from the technical side of things, how did things go, what needs to change, what changes are we going to make for this next time frame, and we call it time boxing. And the retrospective is really helpful because it helps the whole team learn as they progress through a project, ongoing learning, as opposed to looking back at the end of a project and doing lessons learned. So at the city, I was on an agile project, and I ended up somehow with two books from Amazon on Diana Larson's book on retrospectives, Diana and Esther Darby retrospectives, and so I brought one of them to the meeting. And in Agile with Scrum, one of the ways to empower the team is to try to have, encourage all team members to take on as many of the roles of the process as possible. And so I put the book on the table. I had led the first retrospective, and so I put my extra book on the table, and I said, well, whoever takes this book could lead the next retrospective. And so one of our quietest, most technically, brainy physics-oriented guys took the book. And I said, all right, I'll work with you on this. I'll work with you if you, want me to kind of help you lay out a template and stuff, but you'll be fine. And he took it. We talked once, really briefly, and in the meeting, we were all sitting around. He stood up, and everyone, I don't know if you've ever had that experience where people just kind of get taken aback, like, wow, this is surprising. As soon as he stood up with the markers in his hand and the flip in front of the flip chart and started telling the story, that's what practically everybody in the room did. They were so amazed that this person, whom they had always considered to be the quietest, most highly technical person in the group, would lead a meeting.
Wow.
Anyway, that was amazing. I really thought
that's
that was
wonderful.
And it was fun,
wonderful.
And it illustrated the power of that management structure. It encourages that, and then we saw it happen. Yeah, it was really fun.
That's so great. That is so great. I love hearing that. Just in the education world, this is a much less technical approach than you're doing, but in the education world, there's this entire move, as it gets said, to stop being the sage on the stage and become the guide on the side. And you've just made an example of that perfectly. So instead of being the holder of all knowledge, telling people what to do, you guided somebody, and a star was born. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah.
It was really
how great. How great. How great. Mm-hmm. So do you think that your clients recognize the difference between what you do and what your competitors may do to manage a project? Has this, all this in-depth study that you've done and all this broad-based study that you've done, has it worked for you, or do people recognize the difference?
Definitely. I tend to get a lot of follow-on work so far, and I think the real test is going to be when I branch out. And, as I'm branching out and reaching out to new clients, what they're going to think. But I think with my follow-on clients, one thing they've kind of said is they don't really know what I do, but it works, so they want me to keep doing it.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to do is find ways to really spell out my approach and how I think about things, so it can be replicated, and take my bookshelf of hundreds of books and distill it into one book that people can understand.
Mhm. That's great.
But what do you think?
That's great.
Wish me luck.
Well, when you have put together a different way of looking at the world, you've got to write. It's the only way that you have somebody's attention long enough to share a different approach and a different way of doing things, where they can mull over it and they can hold it, they can pick it up and read it again and, backtrack. And that's why a book is so valuable. And, you really do want other project managers and others who hire project managers to see that you have created a new way of carrying out this most important, element in making things happen. And I think a book is going to be critically important for your future success. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is a lot of work. I've started, and I have a lot of bits and pieces of material, and now the challenge will be how to, focus it. And I actually use my process on laying out my ideas for it, so I did follow it for myself. Cool. But writing is a challenge, Jackie. I even wrote a book review. I think I told you I wrote a book review for the PMI chapter, and it got accepted in the PM World Journal. And I learned last night that it took me a lot of work to review this one book, and it wasn't a very long review. But they told me last night they're really excited because not very many of our chapters' book reviews get accepted to the PM World Journal. So it paid off. And some other writing that I've done, the talk I gave in Rome, it started out as an experience report, a case study on the project in Florida, because I just knew there's something really big there, and everybody's facing a lot of the same challenges, especially on these complex, multidisciplinary team environments. And but it was really interesting to try to write down what we had been doing. I had records of meeting notes and templates and all of that, but I didn't really have it clear in my head exactly how we had been approaching the project. And and I was really honest about the challenges and where we succeeded in some of the tools we selected and where we didn't succeed. And right. It's really valuable because then it helped me think better about how people adopt new ideas, and that starting simple is really a good idea.
Yeah. Oh, that's just absolutely fantastic. I gather, what I'm hearing is that you are really coming into your own with your own view of how things work, your own unique combination of how and when you use tools to move projects forward, and that you're, about to write about that, that you are really taking your stand, that you're coming into your own, that this is a value, that what you are creating, which is uniquely you, is something that other people can use, and it will move the project management discipline forward, and it will help people think differently about what they're doing. And that's big. So
yeah, it is big. Well, and when I get scared, Jackie, I wanted to just remind you, when I get scared, I do stand up and do my Wonder Woman pose. I can write. I can set the world.
I love it. I love it. I think that's absolutely wonderful, because we do get scared, when you're kind of out there by yourself, you get scared. And I'll bet you're not as much by yourself as you think. Yeah.
No, and that's something I really remind myself. I've had such the more I put myself out there, the more help I get. And I think that's really important for a solopreneur. And you've been telling me that for years. And I, sometimes the more I talk about what I'm doing and say what I want to do, the more people show up who want to help me do that. And you had said that, and I wasn't sure I really believed it, but it's true. That's exactly what's happening. I wanted to talk about this project, and I found a home for it, and people came forward and helped me find a way to give a talk on it. And then after the talk, people showed up, and said they connected me with the person I need to talk to finalize the experience report and get it published. So it's just all coming together, which feels really good. I mean, it means a lot of work, but it feels good to be at this place.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So, Alicia, you say in your marketing information that you're committed to using the learning organization. So, what exactly does that mean? And how do you use that in your work?
In a general way, Jackie, I share what I know, and I, as long as the client is willing and the team is willing, I explain what I'm doing to them, while we're doing it, and I encourage them to take the marker. When I'm facilitating, when I first learned the technology of facilitation method, I went back to the city of Portland and told my client, described to my client that methodology, and I encouraged him, begged him for an opportunity, as soon as he could find an opportunity to let me show it to them, and then there were some meetings where I actually had someone else lead it instead of me, and they're using that methodology or some form of it on a regular basis now. And the other, there's another example which I was talking about before, which was the retrospective. So if an organization or and a project really is a project team is really a temporary organization. If they're committed to learning, then the best way to learn is as they go. And, so I try to build that into my projects. People, it seems that kind of reflecting back, maybe like we do for ourselves personally, it seems to be the last thing we think about, or maybe we think, once a year is enough. But it's hard to make incremental changes and keep big disasters from happening if you do it that way. The best way, and this is what I talk about with my clients and try to build it in with retrospectives, is let's learn as we go, make incremental changes, because as long as we're honest, we can identify where we're getting off track sooner. And Doug DiCarlo, who wrote Extreme Project Management, said, fail, I'll paraphrase. He said, fail early and often. And I asked him about that. I said, wow, there are a lot of organizations that don't want you to fail. And he clarified it and said what that really means is if you reflect back and you catch small failures soon enough, you can make the incremental changes you need to make to be successful. And I see that in action.
Oh, that's great. I've seen lots of things happen. I don't manage projects anywhere near as complex as you do, Alicia, but I've certainly seen a lot of businesses that tend not to do that retrospective and reflection and learning from their businesses. And I think one of the things we do at the Small Business Development Center is help people review what has gone on and figure out what that was, what happened, why it happened, and what they could do to get different outcomes if that's what they want, and how to keep what was happening, if they're on the right track and that's what they want. And I think we as advisors to businesses are fulfilling that same role on a, in a way. I mean, we're not doing it with a team. We're doing it one-on-one with an entrepreneur. But it is so important to learn from your experiences. And,
right.
There's such a push to move on to the next thing, go after the next bid, go after the next grant, go after the next client, time, hurry. And I think it's a good thing to be doing, that we help businesses have a retrospective, be reflective about what's going on for them. And otherwise they don't grow.
Right. Well, and there's a level of honesty in there, too, that people have to be honest about what's really happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise they won't grow. And we see that
right.
on teams, too. You have to be able to, and in order, in the organizational, in the team environment, in order for them to be able to speak up and say what's going wrong, they have to feel safe.
Yes.
And so that's another role that as a project manager, and that's what I advise my clients to, is the team has to feel safe to be able to really learn and grow, and for you to get the best project you need. That's a hard thing to make. That's a hard thing to ensure happens in organizations because of performance reviews and evaluation systems, and so there's a lot of conversation around that. And how do you really do that? And it seems easier in startup companies, but in these traditionally hierarchical companies or systems, it's a challenge.
Yeah, I think that's because the younger companies are also excited and so mission driven, whereas the older companies have become more bureaucratic, and there's a lot of emphasis in them often to keeping everybody in line rather than exploring new possibilities to achieve the mission. And it's a shame when that happens to older companies, but it does, and they either get over it or they're not going to last for a terribly long time because you lose your best people. So it seems to me that there's just a huge emphasis on project management today. I hear more and more about that, that project management as a career. So do you think as a society we're working on more complex projects than we did in the past? Is that what is happening?
Definitely. I think, I was trying to put this in context. What came first, the more complex projects or the tools to be able to start dealing with them? I'm not sure. But for example, the Florida project is evaluating, building a decision-making tool to use to make water resources decisions, management decisions, in the face of sea level rise. So this is a very forward-looking project, but it's imperative that South Florida starts, really understanding what the trade-off decisions can be, what the options are, and then how to make them. That's really complex. I mean, the technical groups involved include engineers, economists, fisheries. There's a carbon sequestration group. And a social dynamics, the way people make decisions. So it's a really complex project, and it has to be, because it's sure the engineers could have developed a model and started wielding it, but it might have been meaningless if it didn't have all these different parts integrated.
Yeah.
So that's one example, and there are other things like crises that we hear about in the paper, or even have maybe been involved in, like the Chilean mine collapse, the hurricanes. All of these kinds of things are huge, complex problems that have to get dealt with, and they're seemingly overwhelming and they're chaotic. And so our tools, we have to have the right tools to deal with things like that. And we've got the internet. We have better collaboration tools, virtual tools, and we have more access to data than ever before. And, all of those are actually helping us tackle some of those things in a different way than we ever had. We have access to, you could build a team with experts across the world if you wanted to now, and you wouldn't have to worry about flying people in and out from meetings all the time.
Right. The world has gotten much smaller. So
it has.
I think that's wonderful that there's a tools to pull all of those voices together. One part of my brain is listening and saying, maybe we can avoid some wars by doing that. And another part of me is saying, holy moly, it's a good thing this has come forward, because we are in a lot of really complicated problem messes, that we've done with the environment and climate change. And, it's a good thing there's some tools and some people who have those tools and the skills to help us find ways to talk about them and propose solutions that will work. Wow, big stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and
so you've also talked.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to make one more comment, Jackie.
Sure.
Related to that, you had talked about hierarchical organizations, and the way I learned to do project management was more you're the project manager, you're in charge, you make decisions. Maybe you tell people what to do. But if you think about these really big, complex projects, experts around the world, there's nothing like that is going to drive them to do anything. It's more that need to be part of something bigger than themselves, and and self tools or some kind of discipline or structure around just enough so that they can self-organize and do the work that they know needs to be done, and they know better than any one person.
Yes.
That's kind of my soapbox.
That's fantastic. So you've also talked about team science in the past. Do you want to talk about what that is and what's going on in that realm?
Yeah, a little bit. I've been exploring that since I got involved in the project in Florida, which is a research project, scientific research project. And team science, and there's a new interdisciplinary field called the science of team science that have grown out of the National Institute of Health, and there's some current funding from the National Science Foundation. The team science initiatives, and those promote collaborative and cross-disciplinary approaches to answering research questions about particular phenomena. So that's what team science really is. And then the science of team science is looking at, doing research to look at and try to understand what kinds of circumstances facilitate or hinder the effectiveness of all this collaborative science. So it's pretty interesting. It's sort of I think, though, I'm hoping, I brought this up at an Agile project management meeting last week where I gave a talk, and I mentioned it, and the group was very interested in following it. One of my slides was, look at this. They're addressing some of the same issues we're all addressing. This need for collaboration, complexity, cross-disciplinary approaches. So anyway, it's related, and I'm not, there are a lot. There's a lot of. I've been trying to collect some of the journal articles, and I think since 2005, maybe they started earlier, and they're spread across a lot of different journals, social sciences, management journals, scientific research journals. So and I think they're trying to collect it all into, sort of a place where they can help other researchers understand how to do this kind of work, how to manage this kind of work.
So, when it all comes back to, we're listening to this wonderful theory and your approach and all, but it's still a business. So do you have a specific type of project or client that you're targeting these days? Well,
the project specifically is complex and multidisciplinary or cross-functional. I get really excited about that type of project. And the client, I'm working with municipal, state governments and this university clients, but I also am very interested in branching out into some international work. So I'm still evaluating my market there. And I've made a lot of connections with people in other consulting firms, and I've been talking about doing some teaming arrangements. So I'm not quite sure right now, Jackie. That's probably where I need to get back in looking at my business planning.
Yeah.
But I'm being very agile about these are opportunities, and there are things out there that I never even knew existed. So that's pretty exciting to me.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I can see that, and I can see that the international would be very appealing. Many of the issues that you're talking about that would have an engineering base to them, such as the Florida project was what to do with, rising sea level rise and water resources. We might be locally able to solve that, but, overall it's a global problem. And, air quality is a global problem. And feeding people, because you started out in bio and ag, that's a global problem. And I can see how you would be interested in the international aspects of that. It'd be quite fun to be part of, guiding a team that was guiding the discussion. And, I look at you as kind of smoothing the road so that the participants can move down it. And, you're creating the channel through which they can be thinking and working together and solving these gigantic problems, and do it without having to be paying attention to where are the curves in the road, because your facilitation and human dynamics and tools and processes are, you're like holding the energy for the discussion, so that the discussion can be, deep and meaningful. And I can see that international would be very appealing to you for that, because we got some big, hairy issues.
Yeah, wouldn't that be fun?
Oh, yes, I think you'd have a great time with that.
Yeah, definitely.
So, we've only got a few minutes left, but do you have any tips or advice that you could give any of our listeners about how they should approach some of the complex problems they might have in their own businesses? Are there some basic things they could do to ease the organizational or communication process or relationship building processes?
Well, yeah, Jackie, and you've heard me talk about this a lot, but and I still really believe in this. If you have a vision for what you need to do, and you can create some high-level milestones, when you need to accomplish something, for example, then, related to that workshop that I give, the Corral the Chaos, break it down, frame it up, and then get it done. And, it sounds kind of like a slick marketing idea, but you take your project and break it into small enough bites so that it's not overwhelming. You have some things that you can start on, and that's the biggest hurdle, just getting started sometimes. And you don't try to agonize over, getting everything figured out from the beginning, because as the project unfolds, you'll learn more and you'll just continue doing this step. But once you get those bits, once you get some ideas together, then collect them and start framing them up into, and you have to ask the right questions, but you frame them up into an order, and the order sort of gives the project structure. And then the getting things done part is using some of those management tools that I've just been describing, especially Agile. Iteratively develop your work, continuously review, and continuously replan. And you might be amazed at how you can can take on something really big that you didn't think was possible.
Yes, yes. I can see
that.
I
forgot a step.
Yes?
Sorry. Celebrate at the end. Always celebrate. Celebrate.
I like that a lot. I can see that would work. And what you're really saying to people is that you're aiming for a goal out there, but the whole thing is in motion, and you can't plan steps 1 through 25 at the beginning, because by the time you take step 1, what you need to do in step 25 is going to have changed, because it's dynamic. It's in motion. So you break it down into the small pieces, and then you probably, when you're talking about frame it up, means segment it. Let's do this and see where we are at the end of steps 1 through 5, and then regroup, and then steps maybe 6 through 10. Maybe we don't need step 11 through 14. Whatever it is. But so in other words, it's an active, dynamic process, is what I'm hearing.
Right.
Cool.
Exactly.
At any size business, whether you're an international, worried about international fresh water supply, or you're putting together your writing your book as a very good and creative project manager. That is also a process.
Yeah. I really think so. And Jackie, you gave me that first opportunity to give that workshop to test out that idea. And since then I've been giving it to a lot of different types of people, organizations. The reason why I'm on the Florida project is my friend, I encouraged him to come take the class and just see, because I thought if he didn't want to hire me, he could at least learn some things, and he did, and he saw a lot of value in what I was teaching. And at that same workshop, I had a person who worked at a bank who was doing, I guess he was doing loan processing, and he found it very valuable and learned a lot, and has now since moved in some higher management roles, and continues to learn some of the things that I was teaching him about. And so anyway, it really works for. I'm pretty convinced it works for any kind of project.
That's fantastic. So if our listeners are excited about what we've talked about today and want to get in touch with you, how can they find you?
Well, they can go to my website, and all of my pertinent information's on there. It's www.Lanier, LANIER-consulting.com. You can call me, 503-970-3487. You can also email me, Alicia at Lanier-consulting.com. And I also am giving my workshop again at Clackamas Community College, October 22nd. So that's the next time it's scheduled.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, Alicia, I've loved having you on. I love the conversation. I think you are just so right on with how you've put your business together and how you've integrated all these different disciplines to solve big, complex, hairy problems. And I'm just wishing you every success as we move forward. And listeners, I want to thank you for joining our show today. It's been great. And remind you that this is Jackie B. Peterson. I'm the author of Better, Smarter, Richer, 7 Business Principles for Solos, Encores, and Creative Entrepreneurs, all of you in one-person businesses. And I want to remind you that one-person businesses are different than traditional businesses, and there's some things you simply need to do to get the financial success that you're seeking. And go to the website. You can download the free ebook outlining the 7 principles. You can sign up for our newsletter, join the conversation on the blog, and maybe even more importantly, you can download and buy the book and work through the exercises to help you change your thinking and find the success that you're seeking. Anyway, thank you for being with us, and I hope you'll join us again next week on Solo Pro Radio. Goodbye.
Thank you, Jackie.